Someone once said, all happy families are alike. Each unhappy family is unhappy in its own way. Well, in my experience for projects, it's the opposite. There are many ways for projects to succeed, but they all fail in the same way. One thing you see very often is that agile projects are sold as being the answer to all of the problems that trouble traditional projects. Well, of course this isn't true. Agile projects suffer from all the same problems as traditional projects. They're trying to achieve the same result after all. The difference is that agile projects deal with those problems in a different way. Because agile is oversold, when you start to see problems during an agile project, the client can get upset pretty quickly. And if you don't handle those things properly at this stage, it can get quite nasty. I call this problem a failure to surf the hype curve. The hype curve is a thing that Gartner came up with to describe what happens when a new product is introduced to the market. Basically, people get really excited when they hear about a cool new thing. They get disappointed when they realise that it doesn't solve all their problems, but if they stick with it, eventually they'll find it useful. So, when you as a project manager get assigned to an agile project, the client will in all likelihood be at the top of the peak of inflated expectations. And if you plan to deliver something to the client every 2 weeks, then the first test of how well the project is going happens a mere fortnight after you start. And inevitably, the team will have overestimated how much they're able to achieve in the first 2 weeks. And in my experience, if you're trying to build something new, the team will overestimate what they're capable of by about 40 to 50% for the first delivery. So now you've got a situation where you have to go back to the client with only half of what was promised. And worse than that, if you extrapolate the evidence of the first 2 weeks over the whole project, you're now forecasting that the entire project will cost twice as much as what was budgeted. So you've travelled the curve from peak of inflated expectations to the trough of disillusionment in a mere 2 weeks. Now traditional projects, by contrast, will be over halfway through before this point is reached. And by that point, so much money and effort has been spent that it's just easier to grind on to the finish than it is to stop. Now what makes this point so dangerous is when you get here, there'll be tremendous pressure to fix the broken project, when in fact, the project is not broken at all. So there will be calls either to put in traditional project controls or to abandon any kind of planning and feedback altogether. Now, if I had £1 for every time I've heard someone say what we need is less planning and more doing, well, I'd be a rich man. Of course, giving up on planning and tracking at least has one advantage. It postpones the inevitable point when you have to give the really bad news, which is that the story that the first delivery told you was right, and that the project really will take twice as long and cost twice as much as expected. And you won't have to do that because you won't know where the hell you are. So, if you're an agile project manager and you're in this situation, what do you do about it? Well, the point about the agile approach is that it is realistic. It acknowledges by its very structure the uncertainty that's inherent in projects. Now, the reason something is a project rather than a task or a manufacturing process is there's an element of the unknown, and where there is the unknown, there is risk. Traditional projects, by contrast, start from this premise of an ideal project plan and an ideal project budget, and then they paste risk management and change management all over the top, like sticking plasters, to stop the entire edifice breaking apart at the first unexpected event. So what you should do is this. From the very first meeting with the client and at every possible opportunity thereafter, make sure that you emphasize the value of the agile approach. Namely, it gives the client real information about the real progress of the project. Information is power. You're giving the client the ability to make decisions based on data. Now, you should also make the point that even 50% of what was expected is better than a traditional project. After 2 weeks of a traditional project, you'd still be writing the startup documentation. Secondly, if you've got an inexperienced team, plan to deliver to the customer no more often than once a month. Now, purists will disagree with me here, but I find that when people are new to Agile, they tend to treat each delivery as though it was a mini waterfall. For example, say they're expected to deliver 10 things in 10 days. They'll spend the first 8 days making them and then the last 2 days testing them and packaging them up for release. A longer period gives you more chance to work with the team to pull activities like testing and assembly of the parts and so on forward, so that by the end they'll have 50% of what was planned complete and ready to ship out, rather than 100% of everything just half done. Whatever you do, however, don't let yourself be persuaded to allow the team to take more than 1 month between deliveries. Here's a true story. I once worked for a supplier to a blue chip that had a major program of ongoing work. They would deliver every 3 months, and each delivery was tremendously painful. Now, a short time after I left, they decided to move to a delivery every 4 months, thinking that that would ease the pain a little. And you know when they made their next delivery? 18 months later. All of the projects I have managed as an Agile project manager and those that I have overseen as a program manager that uses Agile have followed the same pattern. Getting the first delivery out is a nightmare. The second is a little easier, but from the third onwards it's plain sailing. You've got the trust of the client because now you have a track record and the team knows how to deliver. So if you look at the hype curve, the first delivery is at the bottom of the trough, the second is about 3/4 of the way up the slope of enlightenment, and the third and subsequent deliveries are on the plateau of productivity. I hope you found that useful. I'll be posting up videos about the other major reasons that Agile projects can fail over the next few weeks. Please subscribe if you want to learn more.